So I've got a 2005 Buick LeSabre that was just fixed. The vehicle came to the shop, and the customer called and said the vehicle failed the smog test, and this happened sometime last year. The tags on the vehicle are June of 2017, so the car's been sitting for a while. As far as she knew, and there was some question on what actually happened on the car, because the customer that brought the car to me is not the actual owner, and the owner of the car is an elderly man that's going to be giving up driving. And he was bringing it to a shop, and they did some things, and they weren't really sure what needed to be done. I kind of got from the conversation from her, the customer that brought the car to me, it sounded like there might have been a catalyst code. So I spent a little bit of spent a little bit of time, with the vehicle. And when it came to me, because the vehicle had been sitting, the battery was 100% discharged. So, I started with, no monitors, have running past, and, no diagnostic trouble codes, and that was due to, a bad battery. So I put a battery in the vehicle, and at this point, the car has passed the California smog test. So, I see a lot of information out on, the internet, and how do we test a catalyst? Do we trust the computer? Do we look at oxygen sensors? Do we try and clean cats? There seems to be a lot of misinformation. So, what happened on this was, the vehicle had, after I'd hooked up the battery, there was a coolant leak from, the heater pipes coming off the intake manifold to the serpentine belt tensioner. So I went ahead and replaced that, and took it for a drive cycle, and a P0320 set on it, which is a knock sensor DTC for bank 1. Looking at that, there was a problem with the wiring, and somebody had done something on the knock sensor. So that was kind of the first place I had to start, and that did not set right away. So I took it for an initial drive cycle, and at this point, to get it to where it's passing a California smog test, it's got a total of 33 miles. So I fixed the knock sensor problem and went ahead and replaced the pipes coming off the tensioner, and now I'm back at a point where I can take it for another drive cycle. Cleared the knock sensor DTC, so we're starting from scratch. What I ended up with was a catalyst code that had said after a couple of trips of driving this. So I've got a P0420, and P0430 is very similar. So do we look at, and what I've got is, I've got, data from the Tech 2 put on a friend of mine owns, or, his son put up a website called Scanshare, .io, and it's free to join. And what you can do is, take data from your scan tool and put it up, and where you can actually look at it on the screen. So I've got a trip that I took, and this is prior to replacing the catalyst on the vehicle. So do I look at oxygen sensors? And let me go to another one on here. So the O2 sensor, or the catalyst test on this, is actually tested out in idle. Do I rely on O2 sensors? What exactly are we doing? So do I look at temperature, before the cat, after the cat, use a pyrometer? Do I trust the software on the computer? And I'm going to say, and this might go against conventional wisdom, but this has kind of been hashed out on, IATN, which is International Automotive Technicians Network, over 20 years ago. And, there were guys that were putting up, captures of, is this, a catalyst that is bad? Can we use, the O2 sensor after the CAD, compare it to before the CAD, and determine whether the catalyst is good or bad. And I'm going to say I'm going to rely on the software. So, what I did do was, looked at this, and I'm just putting this up for information only, but I'm gonna say this is kind of a simple thing. We have a P0420, P0430. I looked at calibration updates. Do we have anything related to a P0420? This one doesn't have a Bank 2 catalyst. It's a V8 3.8 engine. So I don't see anything here that's going to help with a calibration update or reprogramming of the computer for this particular problem. Do we go to mode 6 data and look at that? We can, but this is informational only, and this is what the computer is using for testing this. I did go to P0420, and it kind of gives you what we're actually doing on this. So this three-way catalytic converter controls emissions of hydrocarbons, carbon monoxide, oxides of nitrogen, NOx. The catalyst within the converter promotes a chemical reaction which oxidizes the hydrocarbon and the CO that are present in the exhaust. So hydrocarbon, unburned fuel, carbon monoxide, partially burned fuel. This process converts the HC and CO into water vapor and carbon dioxide. It reduces the NOx, converting the NOx into nitrogen. So that's essentially what a converter does. We need to have a stoichiometric or very close to it mixture, which is 14.7 parts of air to 1 part of fuel. That's in order for the catalyst to work correctly. So, let me show you a picture of what this, cat looked like. And, what I did do was I put the, cut the old catalyst off and, put an aftermarket one on, which meets California smog testing requirements. So it has the, correct numbers. The substrate on this is not damaged. This catalyst did not overheat. I don't see any evidence of that. What caused the cat to go bad? I really can't tell you because the car has I think 110,000 miles, and I know no record of this. Usually, and the adage goes, cats don't die, they're killed. So I'd like to know the reason why this catalyst went bad, but I don't see anything currently on this vehicle that's going to cause this that causes catalyst to go bad. Fuel trim looks within normal parameters, and we're plus or minus like let's see, short terms currently out here 0 degrees, and long terms -3 percent on the fuel trims. So currently putting a catalyst on this car, I'm comfortable that whatever's going on with this vehicle now will not damage a new cat. So I'm going to say not to offend anybody, but you're going to have to trust the computer on this and rely on the computer to make the judgment whether this catalyst is good or bad. I've got captures that if I had to say, looking at this, I'm going to highlight this particular section right here. This thing's sitting at 686 millivolts, and it's not changing. Each one of these frames, from 960 to 980, that's 20 frames. The Tech 2 updates in 200 milliseconds, which is 5 times a second. So we're looking at a couple of seconds of data from 960 to 980, or actually 2 seconds of data. Is that right? Well, anyway. Looking at this, the primary O2 sensor is okay. Don't see a problem with that. It looks like we are running some intrusive tests here. The PCM is commanding this rich and lean. So to kind of sum this up, I'm going to rely on the computer to as a judgment whether this is good or bad. In absence of any calibration updates for P0420 or P0430. I'm going to go with what the computer says. And the manufacturers have a vested interest in, making sure that this will pass a smog test, because they have to warranty these for 7 years or 70,000 miles, and in some cases 8 years or 80,000. As far as like Volkswagen, when their vehicle was not meeting the emission standards on the diesels, there's some pretty stiff penalties for trying to fudge some of the testing on this. One thing California has done is they've gone away from emission testing on vehicles 2000 and later, and all they're doing is relying on the monitors and whether there are any diagnostic trouble codes stored. There are some smog techs that are out there in California that said, we have to measure emissions, and it was kind of my experience, in absence of any DTCs or codes that it set, and the monitors have run and passed, the high percentage of problems, up in the high 90s, these vehicles would have passed the California smog test. So, kind of in absence of, any diagnostic trouble codes, the monitors have run and passed. I'm good with, the catalyst. This particular one, this data failed the test, and, I didn't happen to take an after capture, but, it may or may not look much different, but I'm going to rely on the software for whether this actually, will pass the catalyst test, which it has. So, with no exhaust leaks, and that's kind of rare, the vehicle's in fuel control, no calibration updates, this thing needs a cat, and that's what fixed it. So, I would not clean cats. I'm not going to use pyrometers to, determine whether they're good or bad. The testing on the O2 sensors has usually always taken place, and, if the catalyst test is run and passed, there have been cases where, the O2 sensors haven't passed all the testing on there, but, maybe we're talking about a fuel trim imbalance, but the major testing of the O2 sensors usually takes place before the catalyst test is even run. So I appreciate you watching. If you have any, comments, you want to make or, put up a correction to this, I'd appreciate any comments. And, if you like what I have up here, you can always click subscribe. Thank you.